What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we have another Planeswalker to discuss. It is Wrenn and Realmbreaker. So if you have not been paying attention to the March of the Machine story, we have the Phyrexians invading the entire multiverse through this gigantic, very powerful tree named Realmbreaker. Well, the heroes have Wrenn on their side, who previously of Wrenn and 6 and Wrenn and 7, Wrenn is a dryad who melds with trees. And so 6, the very first time we ever saw Wrenn was on the card Wrenn and 6. And the reason that they were named Wrenn and 6 was, well, Wrenn was the dryad, and the tree that she was bonded with was the 6th tree that she had bonded, and therefore she just named it 6. That was kind of her nickname for the tree. And so that was Wrenn and 6. We then had Wrenn and 7 in one of the most recent Innistrad sets as well, and now we have a situation where Wrenn has melded her 8th tree, and that tree happens to be Realmbreaker, the gigantic tree that is causing this, it's making the Phyrexian invasion possible. It's the bridge between worlds. So, kind of a big freaking deal. The idea of, the idea of one of our heroes literally inserting their consciousness and melding their literal body with the heart of the war machine of the enemy is kind of awesome, and that's what's happening here in what's being depicted in this story, or in this card. So, is the card itself good? Well, let's jump into it. So it's a legendary Planeswalker Wrenn for 1 green. With the passive, lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. +1, up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste until your next turn. It's still a land. -2, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand. -7, you get an emblem with you may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard. So, the card is interesting in its kind of identity. But honestly, I feel like the card is it reads like it should be really splashy and should be really powerful. I don't think this is a card that's going to see much competitive play at all. As a jank brewer myself, though, I'm intrigued by it. I like it quite a lot from that perspective. This is mostly, in many cases, this is going to be mana fixing. Although, to be honest, our mana bases are in pretty much every format right now have gotten so good that I don't know how relevant that's going to be. But it gives you mana fixing, which, okay. But the +1, I mean, what it's going to do is basically just weaponize one of your lands for a couple of turns in hopes of getting to that ultimate. Because if you can get that emblem, that's a very, very powerful emblem. You know, you may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard. Just your graveyard becomes an extension of your hand. That's wild. Like, that's really freaking good. So if you have ways to proliferate into that and you have ways to get to that, it could be incredibly powerful. And in various mill strategies, this is going to be just absolutely rad. The other thing is that -2 can help you find combo pieces. So that's relevant. So if you're doing a deck where you have 2 or 3 combos that you're trying, or you have like 2 or 3 cards that you really need to execute or get your hands on to execute a combo, and you just haven't seen them, you could take a wild gamble, -2, and maybe hit one and get it into your hand. And it doesn't cost you mana, unless it's the turn Wrenn came in. So maybe you have the mana open to actually cast a combo piece. So that presents kind of this, it's a situation where maybe you can get there. It gives you a little extra reach, it gives you a little extra hope, maybe. But it's kind of a desperation move. Like, there are better ways to draw cards than that. And this only gets you permanent cards. So that's relevant. So if the combo piece you're looking for is a sorcery, well, too bad. Wrenn can't help you find it. Wrenn can help you dump it into your graveyard, where you can stare at it and really wish you hadn't just down-ticked Wrenn, because then you can't, you're further away from the ultimate. I don't know. I think the card is interesting. I like the design, and it's the kind of thing I definitely want to build. However, if you are interested in just competitive viability, I don't think that's here. We were talking with, so Elspeth was one we looked at yesterday, Archangel Elspeth. I like that card. I'm kind of high on that card, and maybe higher than I should be, to be fair, because as a 4-drop Planeswalker that has a relatively minimal effect, it's probably not going to see a ton of competitive play, but I think it's going to see a way more competitive play than Wrenn. Which is a little unfortunate because the card reads like it should be really powerful, but in reality, it's a 3/3. By turning one of your lands to a 3/3 with the plus, it's a 3/3 that fixes your mana base, in the hopes of getting to that ultimate down the road. So maybe it prevents some damage along the way as your opponent chooses to attack into Wrenn instead of your face. But to be honest, they don't even have to worry about it for a couple of turns. So I don't know. I like the idea of this card very, very much. But to be honest, I was also really high on Wrenn and 7 when that version of her came out. And it was fun. And there were a lot of situations where it was useful. But, you know, Wrenn and 7 is still legal in Standard right now. And if you've played Standard, I would challenge anyone out there. Like, when was the last time you saw Wrenn and 7? I haven't seen anyone play Wrenn and 7 in a very long time. Now, granted, Wrenn and 7 is a 5-mana Planeswalker. This is a 3-mana. However, Wrenn and 7 gets you the token that has reach. It gives you a token with reach that's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. So that token is significantly bigger than what you're getting off Wrenn and Realmbreaker here. Yeah, I don't know. Like, Wrenn and Realmbreaker seems, it serves a lot of different purposes. If you're in a 5-color deck and you absolutely need mana fixing, then sure, Wrenn and Realmbreaker is fine for that. As somebody who runs Chromatic Lantern in a ton of my 3+ color commander decks, just because I don't have the funds to get a really good mana base in those decks, something like this is great because, okay, cool, you know, fix my mana. I like that. But outside of that, I mean, she seems to be doing a lot of little things. You know, getting a 3/3 body online is decent, but you risk one of your lands, and it doesn't untap the land. You know, so if you tap out on turn 3 to play Wrenn and Realmbreaker, then you +1, the land is tapped. So yeah, it has vigilance, it has hexproof, it has all that jazz. But if your opponent then hits with a sweeper next turn, you just lost one of your lands. Like, you know, because it doesn't have indestructible. That's hexproof. That's nice, but I don't know. It's kind of a bummer. Yeah, I like the idea. Oh, the other thing, the -2, milling 3 cards. That is not a deep mill. Milling for only 3 is not much. There are plenty of decks that can leverage graveyards in really cool ways, so that's meaningful. But the fact that the card you pull back to your hand is limited to a permanent from the cards you milled, that really, really, really bites. If that downtick said take a permanent from your graveyard and put it into your hand after you've milled, then that's great. Like, it could be one of the ones you've milled, it could be one of the others, and then all of a sudden, Wrenn and Realmbreaker would have a lot of really cool implications, a lot of cool places where it could really stand out and really shine. As it stands, that -2 is so unreliable. Like, if the mill was bigger, if it was like a mill 5, or you grabbed anything from your graveyard or any permanent from your graveyard, it would be significantly better. But as it stands, like, I think this card is too safe to see significant play in competitive, or honestly, even in Commander. Like, it's too cheap and efficient to really, you know, it doesn't have like any kind. I mean, the -7 is really the only situation. Like, if you're in some kind of like Vorinclex, you know, Monstrous Raider deck where you can play Wrenn and Realmbreaker and then alter immediately, yeah, that feels really good. But outside of that, I don't think this is gonna work in Commander because it doesn't have like that big splashy impact on the board when she hits that you really want out of pretty much every card in Commander. Let's be honest. So there's that, and the impact that she has on the ground for such a little, you know, for, you know, the fact that she's relatively cheap, I don't think is going to be relevant enough in older formats. I could be wrong. Of all the cards we've seen spoiled so far, I feel like Wrenn and Realmbreaker probably has the most playability in Eternal formats, you know, Modern, Legacy, and whatnot. But as an outsider of those formats, I certainly am not going to say, like, oh, you know, Legacy players everywhere, be ready for this. Like, because I don't have that, you know, I don't have that expertise. So if there is viability and if there's maybe combo potential that I'm not seeing that goes back into Legacy or Vintage, please let me know in the comments below. I'm definitely curious about that. But as it stands, I feel like this card is just a little too safe. I think they dialed it back a little too much, which is a shame because it's an amazing story beat. It's a super cool character. I'm rooting for this. And honestly, so it's funny. I was really high on Elspeth, right? And we saw these two Planeswalkers. I'm making the comparison back to back because one, like these events, you know, like Wrenn merging with Realmbreaker and Elspeth like ascending to angelhood and coming back occurred in the same story. So, well, not in the exact same like short story on the website. It was like chapter 7 and then chapter 8, you know, but in any event, they happened almost at the same time, and we saw them one day apart from one another. So I can't help but draw this comparison. I was really high on Elspeth, honestly, because I think I was just super hyped on the story beat, and the art was gorgeous, and I wanted her to be great. She's probably going to be okay. And Wrenn is probably in the same boat. Probably going to be okay. But of the two cards right now, I know the standard deck that Elspeth fits in. You know, there's a lot of mono white midrange in standard that Elspeth can fit in and do some good work in. I don't know what deck I'm putting Wrenn and Realmbreaker in. And I love my 3-color graveyard-based decks where green is prevalent, which feels like it should be a natural fit here. And, I mean, it could be. And I'll tinker. I'll try. There are going to be some Sultai, some Abzan builds with Wrenn and Realmbreaker, don't you worry. I have a feeling Wrenn and Tyvar are going to get along really well. So those two cards are definitely going to be in tandem in quite a few decks. So hopefully there's something there. But, yeah, I'm going to be recasting Canker Blooms like crazy. You have no idea. But in any event, I don't know. I'm intrigued at the possibilities, but I don't think this card is going to make any huge waves. It's going to be really expensive when it first drops. Like the pre-sale is probably going to be really expensive, but I think it's going to taper down pretty dramatically. But I want to be wrong on that. I really want to be wrong on that. Anyway, thanks so much for checking out the video. I appreciate it very, very much. Or the audio podcast. However you consume it, I appreciate it. And I'll catch you on the next one.